And now one more, the last elasticity you'll have to worry about. Notice there are always proportionate change in quantities, and then the name of the type of elasticity tells you what's in the denominator. Here, the cross price elasticity of supply, we're trying to keep track of how responsive suppliers are to changes in price. And here I've got, we tend to think of firms as trying to maximize profits. I've got a businessman running after a dollar. So businesses are going to respond to price effects in the way that's going to at least either increase their profits or reduce their losses. All right, the way this is defined, you've got the idea here. I guess I better have a pen, not an arrow. The elasticity of supply, sometimes I'll write it like that, is equal to, you can say it with me now, the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. That's what it is. And you know, like before, sometimes it'll be convenient to write it as the incremental change in quantity supplied divided by the level of quantity supplied, and that whole thing divided by the incremental change in price divided by the level of price. That's what it is. Price elasticity of supply in the short run would always be positive. The long run could be anything. We'll talk about that later in the semester. I mean, that's what it is. I'll talk about determinants in one more screencast. Graphically, I should mention that graphical representation of the supply has the same interpretation as the graphical interpretation of price elasticity of demand. Here, if I've just drawn a market, I didn't even label some markets with some supply curve. And if we had, instead of the one I've got, we had a supply function S prime where the supply curve rises really steeply. Let's thicken that line up. We can say, because we're going through the same point, P naught, Q naught, and we've got the axes that are scaled the same, we can say that this steeper curve indicates a smaller price elasticity of supply. Even with a big price increase, suppliers, if we're on the black line, suppliers are going to respond fairly robustly to this change. But if we're on this steep line, even though the price change I drew was pretty big, we would see suppliers unable to respond by boosting output. Oil is actually a market like that, where we are so close to the 100% capacity of world oil wells that even a big rise in supply, even a big rise in market price in the short run can't stimulate much increase in production. So it's almost a vertical supply curve. Now, same as this was the case when we were talking about price elasticity of demand, if we had, instead of a steep supply curve, we had a really flat one, and notice it's also going through the same point. We, in this case, would be talking about a much more elastic supply function. So Q1 double prime. Here, if we're at S double prime, that same price increase leads to a much more dramatic quantity increase on the part of suppliers. And we'll talk about why that might be in the next screencast. The extremes, vertical supply curve would be perfectly inelastic supply. Horizontal supply curve would be perfectly elastic supply, perfectly elastic supply. I know it sounds like there's just one syllable difference in those terms, but there's such a big difference in their meaning. Again, perfectly price elastic supply, price elasticity of supply is equal to 0. We got a vertical line. Perfectly elastic, we've got a flat line supply curve. And an estimated supply elasticity of infinity. Well, we rarely see infinity in the real world, but that's what it would be if we saw one. If you've got a competitive producer and industry-wide that those producers can get one more unit to market for the same exact price every time, that's the situation in which the supply curve would be really flat. I think there's a homework problem where you're asked about pizza, where input prices are just fixed, and in that situation you could always supply one more piece of pizza at $1.75 or whatever that works out to be in the homework. But watch out for that one. They're going for a flat supply curve in that problem.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.